Welcome everyone, this is Tactical Itch here, and today we are back for more Total War Warhammer multiplayer battles. With this battle sent in by Coops, a rather experienced Slaanesh player, will be seeing the light armored Chaos faction facing off against the heavily armored Dwarfs. Now, for the army builds here, we have a front line of devoted marauders of Slaanesh. They have anti-infantry bonus, great melee stats, immune to psychology, and also physical resistance, all thanks to the blessing of Slaanesh. As for the other units, we have some armor-piercing Chaos Furies in the skies, more Chaos Mobility, the Slaanesh Mobility Hell Striders with Hell Scourges. Now, over here on the right flank, other than the Hell Striders of Hell Scourge, we also have a single unit of Eternal Entourage, the Heartseekers of Slaanesh with some great melee stats, armor-piercing, and of course Soul Scent, further buffing up their damage output once there are units with low leadership nearby. At the back here, we have some exalted Daemonettes, one of them the Regiment of Renowned Bringers of Beguiling. While the regular exalted Daemonettes can charm their opponents and lower their melee stats, the Bringers of Beguiling can lock their opponents in combat with their rampaging contact effect. As for the magic support department, there's a single Chaos Sorcerer with a Rod of Torment. This is an item that does magic damage. Yes, magic damage and not spell damage. That means the Dawi's spell resistance would be useless against the bombardment. As for actual spells, there's the AoE spell Lash of Slaanesh and also Acquiescence to overcome the Dawi's melee defenses. Leading the Slaanesh army, it is none other than Sigvald the Magnificent, a solid tank with great damage output, a great choice in a lot of matchups. As for the Dawi army, a very tight box with a combination of hammers and explosives for their front line. We have some miners with blasting charges backed up by Norgrimling Iron Breakers, and then there are a couple hammers, one of them the Peak Gate Guards with some nice armor sundering and magical damage. Now at the back we have some Longbeards providing a very sturdy backline supported by some warriors of Dragonfire Pass. All three of them are just surrounding the squishy missile underbelly of the Dawi box with a single unit of Quarrelers, the Iron Drakes for those flaming attacks, and of course some more artillery from the Dawi side, the cheapest one, the bolt throwers, possibly trying to snipe out some big Slaanesh monsters including Chaos Spawns, Keepers of Secrets, and Soul Grinders. Now for the Dawi leadership, an ancestral hero, Hans Valhersen, an ethereal Thane. He is supporting the rightful Lord of the Eight Peaks, Belagar Iron Hammer. He has some great self-buffing tools including Revenge Incarnate for some massive attack and weapon strength buff, Mighty of Stone for some emergency melee defense, and also don't forget about Hammer of Angron for a persistent weapon strength and attack buff. And that's basically it for the army builds. Without further ado, let's get this show on the road. This map is played on the multiplayer Crossroad, a rather boring map which allows the artillery from the Dawi side to maximize their damage due to the lack of terrain. So that means the Slaanesh army needs to move in with something and shut them down as soon as possible before they do too much damage to the expensive cavalry of Eternal Entourage. So the Chaos Furies will be moving in, attempting to find an opportunity to engage. They will first be dropping straight onto the Iron Drakes using their armor-piercing damage to pick off a couple models and also to lure in all these warriors of Dragonfire Pass hammers. They're all jumping onto this first unit of Chaos Furies, hoping to stop them from damaging the Iron Drakes. But all that concentration of forces means that their left flank is now wide open, and so the second Fury was able to drop in without anything to stop them, destroying all these bolt for artillery crew with their devastating flanker trait which doubles their charge bonus. The miners tried lobbing in some blasting charges and destroy the Furies, but unfortunately it is too little too late. They destroyed the Chaos Furies, but that also means that the bolt throwers are taking some friendly fire damage and will be routed. At this point, the Dawi has lost their artillery, though the Slaanesh did lose more in value, but that is not a problem for the followers of She Who Thirsts. With the Hellstriders and Eternal Entourage charging into the flanks and rears of the miners, picking off a few models, the forces of Slaanesh is doing what they do best, disrupting enemy formations with their high mobility, while the Slaanesh infantry are just pushing forward with nothing to harass them, as the artillery is gone and the Dawi missile infantry are distracted by the Slaanesh cavalry. The Slaanesh cavalry has taken some minor damage from the overwatch fire and counterattacks of the Dawi infantry, but that is fine for them as they have accomplished what they need to do to probe the Dawi lines and disrupt their formations. This is how you pick apart the box. You try to disrupt them and force them to make mistakes and openings. And as you can see here, the Dawi formation, the box seems to be falling apart bit by bit. The bolt thrower crew will be picked off by the mobility of Slaanesh, and then there is a gap in their formations allowing mobility to charge in later. While in the front line, devoted marauders are charging forward, but they will be welcomed by a wave of explosive charges. Quickly routed, but then the miners will be engaging with Prince Sigvald, not exactly a greatest engagement for them. Iron Drakes also opening up onto some of the devoted marauders who will be charging into the hammers and will get hammered by the elite dwarf infantry. Now over here, Hellstriders and Eternal Entourage are just waiting for an opportunity to charge in. As more and more Dawi forces, their infantry are now committing to the front line, especially with Prince Sigvald here engaging miners. Belagar Iron Hammer will be charging forward, hoping to fight him in a duel. While at the back here, there are still some warriors of Dragonfire Pass and Longbeard protecting the backline, but the front line of the Dawi forces are slowly crumbling. Not exactly crumbling per se, as some of them are still holding, but with such an elite and narrow dwarf front line, there are a lot of gaps for the Slaanesh forces to exploit, with some of the marauders even sneaking into the back, now chasing down the Iron Drakes. This forces the dwarves to react with a lot of troops hoping to stop the breach, but also disrupting their formations even more. Over here, Prince Sigvald the Magnificent is fighting Belagar, and Belagar, having activated Revenge Incarnate, is a great duelist. Having over 100 attack, actually managed to do some good damage to Prince Sigvald despite only having minus to support and not having the greatest armor piercing. All these exalted Daemonettes with their armor piercing damage are coming in. Their armor piercing and melee attack debuff with the charmed effect would be very effective here. But then the Peak Gate Guard are very close to support. Yes, they took a Rod of Torment, took some damage, but their magic attacks, their runic hammer, would be very cost effective against the exalted Daemonettes of Slaanesh. Now at the back here, the Dawi backline is in a bit of a disarray, since the devoted marauders and Hellstriders are now crowding into the backline, pinning down the Longbeards. This means the Dawi left flank no longer has any troops in reserve. These Eternal Entourage are attempting to charge the miners with blasting charges, but seeing these quarrelers with great weapons open up for engagement, they will be charging straight in. Not exactly a great investment to get the great weapon variant, because it will be wasted. Sacrificing the shield and getting the armor piercing would not do the quarrelers any good, as they shouldn't be engaging in melee anyways, especially against Slaanesh, who doesn't have much armor anyways. There are more and more Hellstriders of Slaanesh charging straight in, seeing that more and more gaps are open in the Dawi box, with the hammers now rampage by the bringers of Beguiling and also Belagar Iron Hammer as well. Now Prince Sigvald can safely duel this ethereal Thane, Hans Valhersen. Unfortunately for the dwarves, these units will continue to rampage as long as the bringers of Beguiling stays in the fight. Now that they're busy fighting the Daemonettes, their backs are open to rear charges from the Eternal Entourage. Over here, the hammers finally shrugged off that rampaging effect, but they are way out of position as the central pocket of dwarf troops are now overwhelmed by all those Slaanesh units. The Peak Gate Guards are almost mopped up by all those Slaanesh cavalry, and Belagar and Hammer, now surrounded by bringers of Beguiling, all those armor-piercing attacks and rampage, his health bar is almost gone in the prolonged engagement. The Norgrimling Ironbreakers also taking massive damage in this kind of situation, being surrounded by armor-piercing forces. Yes, they will have that melee defense to tank out the damage, but for how long can they do that? Hans the Ethereal Thane is also running low on hit points, now targeted by a Rod of Torment. He will soon be finished off. His physical resistance is useless against this magic bombardment, and then the magic attacks from all the Daemonettes will finish him off, leaving only Norgrimlings in the fight. Over here, Sigvald is now surrounded by all these armor-piercing hammers, not the greatest melee engagement for him, but acquiescence lowering their melee defense, and also Hellstriders with Hell Scourges charging in, slamming into their backs using that devastating flanker trait to maximize the damage, while the rest of the Dawi infantry, the Longbeards and warriors of Dragonfire Pass are surrounded by Slaanesh forces. I said that, but then the marauders routed, but then the Eternal Entourage will be running straight into them. At this point, most of the Dawi forces are scattered all across the battlefield, being picked apart by the Slaanesh forces. Without their leaders, even the most stubborn Dawi will be faltering, and with that, Slaanesh will be emerging victorious from this battle. Massive thanks to Koofs for sending in this replay. With the army performances here, we can see that the Slaanesh army is mostly carried by the 2 regiments of Renown. As always, very solid units with solid stats. The Bringers of Beguilement, especially with that rampaging effect, pinning down all the expensive units of the Dawi, including Balaga Iron Hammer, the Ethereal Thane, and also the Peak Gate Guard, preventing the Dawi player to effectively control them, especially in the end where Hans and Balagar were separated, allowing the Slaanesh army to pick them off as they were not able to converge on Prince Sigvald the Magnificent. And with the Peak Gate Guard rampage as well, the Eternal Entourage and the Bringers of Beguilement were able to cut them down, one with their armor piercing and good melee stats, while the other going for that devastating flanking charge. Armor piercing, double charge bonus, they basically ripped apart the whole PK card despite all their melee defenses. As for the other units here, the other Exalted Daemonettes also earned back quite a bit of value, not as much as the Bringers of Beguilement, but still solid damage using their armor piercing and great melee stats to their advantage, and more importantly, limiting the Dawi damage output with their charm effect. As for the Devoted Marauders of Slaanesh, they are always a cost-efficient anti-infantry, infantry. Using their anti-infantry bonus, they were able to beat down the miners, and some of them were able to threaten the Iron Drakes, silencing it and also preventing all that fire damage on the Slaanesh army. As for the other mobility here, we have the Chaos Furies. One of them managed to shut down the bolt throwers, the other pulled away a lot of Dwarf reserve troops, creating an opportunity for the other Chaos Furies to dive in. As for the Hellstriders of Slaanesh there, they were not doing a lot of damage due to the lack of armor piercing, but using that numbers advantage and mobility of the entire Slaanesh army, they were able to disrupt the Dwarf formations and pick apart that Dawi artillery box. The leadership didn't do too much damage here, as most of the work were done by the elite Slaanesh units. As for the Dwarfs here, Balagar Iron Hammer had the potential of winning against Prince Sigvald, especially with the support of Hans, but unfortunately with the Bringers of Beguilement rampaging all these Dawi characters, they were not able to seize an opportunity to kill off Prince Sigvald. As for the Norgremling Ironbreakers, as always, their heavy armor and solid melee defense helps them tank out a lot of damage, even against the elite armor-piercing Daemonettes, though the problem is that they do not have a lot of damage output. Yes, they counterpunched effectively, almost earning back their value, but was not able to carry the game in the end. PK Guard did some good damage against the Slaanesh army with their magic attacks, but then again, being pinned down by the Bringers of Beguilement and recharged by the Eternal Entourage, they were destroyed quickly in the late game, while the other Hammers did some good damage, got a lot of kills, but being rampaged and distracted, running away from the main engagement, limited their damage output. Warriors of Dragonfire Pass not able to earn back their own value as they were trying to pump their Dwarven legs, running from one engagement to the other, wasting a lot of time. Longbeards, same problem here, as they are quite slow and does not have a lot of damage output, taking quite a bit of time to kill off a bunch of marauders, and by the time they finished their engagement, it was too late for them to respond to the crumbling Dawi frontline. As for Iron Drakes here, they didn't earn back much value as they were silenced after shooting one volley of fire, with the Marauders pushing through the rather narrow and elite Dawi frontline, getting into the backlines and shutting down the Dawi missiles, though the Quarrelers did get some good damage by shooting at some of these expensive Slaanesh mobility who doesn't have the most armor or missile block chance to tank out the missile damage. Miners with blasting charges earned back most of their value because of the light armored on the Slaanesh army. Their blasting charges are very efficient, though the bolt throwers only having a single kill, being shut down early by the Chaos Furies. And yeah, that's it for today's battle. I hope viewers you enjoyed, and if you do and want to see more, be sure to hit the like and subscribe down below to get notified when I upload new videos. And if you have your own replays that you want to showcase, feel free to drop by my Discord or send me an email with the replay file attached. I'll be sure to check them out. Also, as a bit of promotion, Clan BBB, which is also my clan, will be hosting a tournament full of prizes in January. If you want to get some competitive multiplayer action going and earn yourself a little bit of reward, feel free to go down to the video description section where I'll be posting a link to the clan's Discord channel. Anyways, that's it for today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Tactical Lich, signing out.